How's it going? Today we're in our third week of our 7-week program based on the book, The Untethered Soul. And through the miracle of I don't know what, we have a bunch of copies in the bookstore. If you remember last week, I said Amazon stopped selling them to us, but they had a change of heart apparently. So we have some copies in the bookstore. So we invite you to pick up a copy today if you've been waiting for that. And so here's the thing about affirmation cards. They're in baskets in the back. If you would like an affirmation card, please pick them up on the way out. I'll say a little bit more about that later, about why that happened like that today. And so about the 7-week program, where we have affirmation cards, you see up here we have our poster up here, and you have the opportunity to grab one of those on the way out as well. They're on the table in the foyer. And put it someplace in your home where you can see it. And put your affirmation card, and at the end of 7 weeks, and there are actually the affirmation cards from 2 weeks are out there on the table as well. So at the end of 7 weeks, you can have your poster that has the reminders of what we did here, and something that you might want to take to heart when you see that in the morning. The other thing that's out there is this study guide. We have home study groups going that are now pretty much all closed. So we had the opportunity to sign up for those last month. However, what you can pick up if you like is a study guide where you can do the study guide at home and stay current with that. And something that I like to do during our 7-week program, because when we do a popular book, what happens is we get a lot of new people that come in to see what's going on, especially if the book is something that's been resonating in their life. And so we like to take the opportunity to show you a testimonial from a congregant that talks about what unity means to them. And I'd like to show you now what unity means to one of our longtime members, Arthur Gore.
My name is Arthur Gore, and I've been a member of Unity of Stuart since 1998. Unity is my centering ground. It reinforces the divinity within me. It taught me why and how I can make miracles, and has just brightened my life.
So how, on a daily basis, how do you use something that you've learned at Unity?
Affirmations and denials are a main part of my life. If something's bothering me, I write down, why can't I have my life without this in? And then I write down everything that pops into my head. And when it gets down to the foolish parts, I know I'm pretty close. And I take it and I rip it up and I flush it down the toilet. When I'm going down the street, in my job, I spend a lot of time in an automobile. And I am constantly doing, I am healthy, I am wealthy, I am feeling terrific. I feel like I need to keep my subconscious mind in the proper direction in order to make the life that I want.
And what would you like somebody who might be new to Unity know about Unity?
This is the place to come and discover the God within you and the miracles that you can make on your own.
Wonderful. Thank you. A place where you can discover the God within. Right? That's why we're here. We also, in the first week of our program, we discovered our inner roommate. For those of you who weren't here in that first week, our inner roommate is that chattering voice that goes on and on and on, that's always commenting on what's going on in our lives, that continuous internal dialogue. And our homework the first week was to watch that voice, to become aware of that voice, to listen to it, particularly in challenging moments, and then to move into the witness. Not to do anything necessarily, but to move into the observer, the witness, and just notice that inner voice. And then last week, in week 2, we focused on the energy of our heart and how powerful that energy is. And how we can use the energy of our heart to clear out blockages that arise. That's a place of power, our heart. And we learned about how to breathe into our hearts, to focus our attention there, and to generate gratitude. And that transforms those inner blockages. And so today we're talking about embracing change. There was a a couple that was 60 years old celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary. And during the celebration, a fairy appeared and said that since they had been such a loving couple, that she would give them each one wish. The husband wished to travel around the world. The fairy waves her wand and poof, he has a handful of plane tickets. Next, it's the wife's turn. And she pauses for a moment and she says, I think I'd like to have a man 30 years younger than me. So the fairy picks up her wand and poof, she's 90. See what can happen when we try to change things outside of ourselves, right? It gets dangerous sometimes when we try to change what's going on outside of us to change someone else or to change life, right? Life is change. Life is change. And what is ours to do is to notice it. We can do that. We can notice it. We can accept it. We can let go of our need to keep things the same. Or we can enter into conflict with life. We can enter into conflict when something goes on that we don't like, when the ups and downs and the twists and turns of life happen. They can help us grow, or they can keep us in a place of fear. That's our choice, and it depends upon our point of view, right? Someone once said, when we let go a little, we get a little peace. When we let go a lot, we get a lot of peace. When we let go absolutely, we get absolute peace. Now, I don't know about you, but for one of the things in my life, and probably for yours because you're here today, is that we're about transformation, right? We're all about transformation. Change, not so much, right? Change, not so much. Maya Angelou said, we delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty. We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve that beauty. Right? That's also true for each one of us. To the extent that we are open to change, we experience growth. We experience soul growth to the extent that we are open to change. But very often, fear gets activated and we try to keep things the same, thinking that we'll be safe and okay. But that doesn't work, not for me, and probably not for you. Elizabeth Gilbert said, if your goal in life is to become fearless, then I believe you are already on the wrong path. Because the only truly fearless people I've ever met were straight-up sociopaths and a few exceptionally reckless 3-year-olds. And they aren't good role models for anybody, right? So embrace change is to become comfortable with fear, not to wish it away. Because fear is going to keep arising. It's the human condition. So our goal then is to become aware of the fear and to notice it, to observe it, and then to work to transform it and to release it instead of trying to avoid it or hide from it. But maybe our default way of being is to, when fear arises, when change arises, we become fearful because sometimes we have things that have happened in our lives that haven't felt so life-affirming, right? So what happens as we go along our life and, we have experienced that change as a child that caused fear, that disturbance, and when we have change arise in our lives now, a disturbance arises and that fear from back here kicks in, right? And so we make decisions based on something that's there, that's in our past. Instead of noticing the fear and saying, oh, this is interesting. Why is this here? What is this doing? How can I transform this fear? Truth is, as much as I would like it to be, life is not under our control. It is simply not under our control. And if we used our past lives and think that no change is good, we're going to run like heck, right? We're going to go crawl at home, crawl into our beds, pull the cover up over our head, and hope nothing ever changes. And then what happens is that we get stuck in these repeating patterns in our lives. Anybody get stuck in a repeating pattern in your life? Yes. So thank you, Kathy. Yes. We get stuck in repeating patterns because we're afraid of change. We're afraid to confront something that's not working. And then we stay in, what do they say? The devil you know rather than the devil you don't know, right? That's some affirmation, isn't it? You ever heard that saying? Have you lived 60 years or have you lived 1 year 60 times? Right? It's interesting for me as I was preparing this lesson was that I read something that the words fear not occur in Hebrew and in the Gospels, in the New Testament, over 100 times. Fear not. And of course, in that day and age and in that time, it was all about putting your faith in a God outside of you, right? Until Jesus came along and started to teach us about the divinity within. But that the message is to fear not, because we have everything we need right here and right now to move through fear and to create the life that we desire and to move through the changes of life. Right? Fear not. Fear is like the buildup of static in the conduit that runs between human consciousness and God consciousness. So for me, what happens when I'm stuck in fear or I'm stuck in negativity, I feel absolutely cut off from spirit. Right? I feel absolutely cut off. There's no God there. Right? I can't access the God. As I'm fond of saying, if we're not feeling the presence of God, who moved? We're the ones who moved. We're the ones who shut down. Spirit is always there, ready and willing. And when we're in fear, we cut off that conduit. So what's ours to do? Open up the conduit. It's a quote I wanted to share. Yeah, it'll come up. Psychotherapist and teacher, Buddhist teacher Tara Brach says, we'll know we're fighting change when our body tenses and our attention shifts from the present moment to a virtual reality where we try to control things. A big flag of fighting change is when we begin to use the word should. I should be different. You should be different. This should be different. That's the opportunity we have to know, oh, okay, I'm fighting change, I'm feeling fearful. Whenever we start to use the word should, right? This should be different. So our tool is to let it rise, to feel it, to let it rise, to notice it, and set the intention to move beyond it, because it's the catalyst. The challenges in our lives are the catalyst for learning and growth, yes? Yes. Anybody know what the Biosphere 2 is? It was a project that was created as, I can't remember what years it was. I didn't write it down. Maybe the 70s, the 80s, 90s? I don't know. But it happened. The Biosphere 2 project, this is from an article, was created as a research tool for scientists to study Earth's living systems. And it allowed scientists to play with farming and innovation in a way that didn't harm the planet. One of the most profound discoveries made by the scientists had nothing to do with a cure for a new disease or an old disease or a new way of farming. Rather, the discovery had to do with the role that wind played in a tree's life. The trees inside Biosphere 2 grew rapidly, more rapidly than they did outside of the dome, but they also fell over before reaching maturity. And after looking at the root systems and the outer layers of the bark, the scientists came to realize that a lack of wind in Biosphere 2 caused a deficiency of what they call stress wood. Stress wood helps a tree position itself for optimal sun absorption, and it also helps trees grow more solidly. Without stress wood, a tree can grow quickly, but it cannot support itself fully. It cannot withstand normal wear and tear and survive. In other words, The trees needed some stress in order to grow strong. My mother used to say, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Okay, God, I'm strong enough now. Right? But this is a good lesson from nature, right? And from trying to escape the stress, right? We call it the winds of challenge. The winds of challenge help make us strong, right? Help make us strong. So, one of the things I like to do when I'm sharing a Sunday lesson is I like to think of something in my life, or something, something usually happens in my life that I can share with, or, there's something that I can put it, make it personal. And as and sometimes if I don't get something on, or during the week or on Saturday night, I go to sleep and I know Spirit is going to give me an example that I can share with you. So I never really stress about it much. And so this morning when I woke up and I do my last minute in my prayer, in my prayer time, I was saying, okay, God, I'm ready. I'm ready for the personal example. Download. Nothing. I got nothing. So then I come to the center this morning to find out that the air conditioning in the kitchen isn't working and in the classroom, and it's really hot in there. And so I get, all guys are on it, Chuck and Ron and Jerry, and they're all on it. They're trying to make the air conditioning work, and I decide to just let it go. Right? And it starts to work. Chuck did some magic, and it began to work. And then this might be too much information, but we all do it, so not a big deal. I go to the bathroom, and I'm doing my thing in the bathroom, and I'm wearing my mic pack, and I drop it in the toilet. I gotta say this, it was a clean toilet. So I come running out and hand it to Jerry, and this is the second time I've dropped the mic pack in the toilets in a year. So Jerry, in his, his loving kindness, just says, okay, no worries, I'll take care of it, whatever. Challenges. And then I come into service and we're doing our welcome, and Stephanie comes up to me and she says, people are asking for the affirmation cards. Where are the affirmation cards? Left them in my office. So the affirmation cards will be available after the service. So thank you, God, for all the challenges this morning and the personal experiences that bring up these things of the fear of air conditioning, right? The fear of, oh my goodness, we're going to have to replace the air conditioning. We've been having issues with it. So there's that fear. So I let that fear come up and I let it dissipate. Okay. God's in charge of the air conditioning, not me, right? And then the air conditioning works, right? Then I drop my microphone in the toilet, and what comes up is not fear so much, but it's shame, actually. What? I know better than that. I know better than to take my pack off before I use the ladies' room. I've done it once before. I can't believe I did that again. What is wrong with me? That comes up, right? And so I get to deal with that. In that moment, when I get triggered with that feeling of unworthiness or shame, I get to let that come up and pay attention to it and then let it go. It's the human condition to let that go. And the same thing with the cards, right? I want to begin to make excuses. Well, if this didn't happen and that didn't happen, I dropped my mic in the toilet and the air conditioning, I would have remembered the cards. I should have, right? So that's the opportunity for me to say, breathe, go to my heart, generate gratitude for my life and for being human, right? And do the next indicated thing, right? So that's what we're all called to do. We're all called to do that. Right? It's not change that I dislike. It's being changed that I dislike. Right? Is that the same for you? Right? When things happen in my life that I did, because change happens, we bring change in, right? When we move across the country, when we change jobs, When we end a relationship, we bring change in. Still stressful, but we can rationalize that, right? It's the change that we don't invite in on a conscious level that we really dislike. And when we can admit that there are some things that we have no power over, we begin the transformation process. When we can realize that, well, the air conditioning, I have no power over that air conditioning. I don't know anything about air conditioning. I have no power over that. So I can step back and take a breath and let it be. You know, I can step back, take a breath, and let it be. So that's in that moment what happens when we recognize that we're powerless over something. We begin that process. We connect with Source, with our divine nature, our Christ consciousness, and that's where the true power resides. And I'm not talking about power to fix life. I'm talking the power to be at peace in the midst of life. The power to be at peace in the midst of life. We all have that within us. There's a pivotal moment when we're triggered. Oh, the other thing that happened today is I came in, you'll notice this tiny little bowl, right? When I came in this morning, Elizabeth came up to me and she said, I don't know what happened, but the striker for the big bowl is missing. So we kind of looked around for it. We had some things going on during the week, and we said, oh, maybe somebody put it in something, and so we looked around for it, and I said, no worry, breathe. It'll all work out. And then I remembered I have this tiny little chime in my office. So there you have it. We got the tiny little chime this morning. So what we have, when something like that happens, that's the pivotal moment when we get triggered. I mean, I didn't really get triggered around that, but I could have. And when we get triggered, we have the choice. We can act from that trigger and do something, say something we might regret, or we can move to our heart. Because our minds, our thoughts are pivotal. So we just have this little illustration here. So here's our mind. We're in our bodies, we're in our minds. And something happens, and we get the trigger. And we have the choice to either pivot to our subconscious and the stuff we carry around and act from that, react, or we can pivot to our superconscious, to our God consciousness, to our heart consciousness, and act from that consciousness. But it's that point that I talked about last week, that point of stillness, that point at the center, our heart energy, right? So that's why it's pivotal when we're triggered, that we go to our heart and we let it guide us into removing the blocks in our lives. Spiritual teacher Neville said, be still and know that you are that which you desire to be, and you never have to search outside for it. You are that which you desire to be, and you never have to search outside for it. And this is true. We don't have to search outside for it, but we do have to develop it. That's why it's called spiritual practice. And being aware in that moment of trigger is such a great time to practice our spiritual tools. So I invite you to ask yourself this question. Am I committed to working this way? Am I committed to paying attention to my triggers and become free of my stuff? Or am I trying to justify it every chance I get? That looks like, it might be fine for you to work that way, but you don't know what happened to me. You don't know what I'm dealing with in my life. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what it is. Because we're not looking to change something else. We're looking to change ourselves, to go within and to be peaceful in the face of life, in the face of everything. There's something on the poster that I want to say. There's a quote from the book. He says, come from a space of peace and you'll find that you can deal with anything. And so the practice is engaging the observer when we are triggered. We're here to remember, right? I'm really not telling anybody anything you don't already know. It's just that we've forgotten. So we are here to remember. We're here to raise our consciousness, to expand our awareness, and to wake up a bit at a time. And we can't rely on our human mind to understand life. The soul, our divine nature, our Christ consciousness is where the understanding resides. So it behooves us in every moment to connect with that, to set the intention to connect with divine source. And yes, it's a mystery, but that's where peace resides, engaging with that mystery. In his book, When Everything Changes, Change Everything, Neil Donald Walsh writes, "Your soul is here on a mission. It did not just suddenly find itself here, nor did it place itself here without purpose or reason, function or intent. It knows exactly what it is doing. And your mind and your body and the physical life all around you are the tools with which it and every other soul is doing that." All of us, we are in the same boat. We are in the same boat. Michael Singer uses this metaphor in the book about the thorn. Who's read this chapter? He uses this metaphor about there being a thorn in your arm. And there's a couple of ways you can deal with it. You can just take it right out. Or you can leave it in there and kind of protect it, right? You can, when you go to bed, you can wrap it to make sure that it doesn't get touched by anything. Or if you go for a walk in the woods, he says, you just got to really make sure that you don't brush up against anything. When you go to hug somebody, you got to really be careful to keep that place safe and protected. Now, that's not a real solution, is it? But that's what we do a lot in our lives with the inner disturbances that we have. Instead of shining the light on them, getting out the spiritual magnifying glass and the spiritual tweezers to excavate it and let it go, we protect it and we muffle it and we put cotton around it. And heaven help us if anybody gets too close to that, right? You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So the coaching is this morning, as soon as you become aware that you're holding on to something, as soon as fear arises, as soon as shame arises, become aware of it and know that it's a powerful force for transformation. When you get the urge to push it down and to hide it and to not have it be touched, shine the light on it. Let it come up. Do this work. Go to your heart. Feel the heart energy and do what it takes to transform that and to come back into that energy of love. Real transformation comes when we embrace our challenges. So this week, I invite you to use the disturbances in your life to be the catalyst for transformation. If something in your life triggers fear this week, see it as what it is. It's just a remnant of the past. And be willing to let it go. Let go of that blocked energy. Again, go to your heart, let it rise up, feel it, and let it cycle through, knowing that it's a catalyst for your growth. Singer writes, once you learn that it's okay to feel inner disturbances and that they can no longer disturb your seat of consciousness, your divine essence, you will be free. You'll begin to be sustained by the inner energy flow. When you've tasted the ecstasy of the inner flow, you will walk in the world, and the world will never touch you. To be in this world, but not of it. Amen? Amen. Let's affirm today's affirmation together. And it's not there. I am open to change. Together. I am open to change. Take a breath. And one more time. I am open to change. I affirm this truth for each and every one of us.